Craig Kelly. As we saw there, that brief statement to Parliament, he has had a difficult few months as a Liberal member, and he will be a Liberal member no longer.
Yes, so I spoke to him a couple of hours ago, including about whether he'd run at the next election as an independent. Have a listen. Craig Kelly, a bit of a shock in party room today, you're resigning from the Liberal Party. What's behind your decision?
Andrew, I've done this with a very heavy heart. I believe that for as long as the rest of this parliamentary term goes, if I'm best to represent the constituents of my area and to be faithful to the oath that I took when I swore in as a Member of Parliament, and to be able to speak frankly and fearlessly, I need to do that from the crossbench rather than from the government benches.
And is this because Scott Morrison told you off the other day? Is it?
No, I have the greatest respect for Scott Morrison. I said in the party room today, I hope he goes on to be one of our longest serving and greatest Prime Ministers. I'll support the government, naturally, of course, on all matters of supply, confidence. There's nothing that I can see that's on the agenda papers that I'm going to be objecting to strenuously what the government is doing. The government should be able to continue as it was and continue to function. But I just feel that if I'm to speak out and to use my voice the best I can, that this is the best decision for myself and for the people that I represent.
Is this because you felt like you were gagged on social media about Ivermectin and these sorts of issues?
Well, I believe one of the greatest mistakes that has been made in this country and also the world was prohibiting doctors from prescribing Ivermectin and also HCQ with zinc. I believe this was a terrible error. It's not about that or the vaccines, and I've been labelled an anti-vaxxer, which is just slanderous smear. I support the vaccine program, but in concert, to use the words of our highest credentialed immunologist, these other treatments should be used in concert with the vaccine. And yet we still have here, I turn on the TV and I hear government bureaucrats saying there's no evidence. That is just false.
I saw Barnaby Joyce leaving before. Was he just coming to offer his support? Did he know in advance you were going to resign from the Liberal?
No, Barnaby didn't. Barnaby's been a good friend. I've known Barnaby before I got into politics, and he was just a good friend to put an arm around me. So,
will you run for the Nats or as an independent at the next election? Would you run in the House or Senate?
Look, I'll make my mind up on that. I've got the rest of this term to serve out to the very best of my ability and to represent the constituents of my area and also all people of Australia to the best that I can.
To do it in party room in the way you did it, sort of a shock resignation, that meant you couldn't be talked out of it. I'm sure that was quite deliberate because Scott Morrison had no idea, did he?
Yeah. I know. I wanted to eyeball all my colleagues. I've got the greatest respect for every single man and woman that sits in that party room. Many of them are my dear and close friends. And I thought if I was going to make such a decision that I had an obligation to them to eyeball them and to do it face to face.
There must have been a particular trigger though. Was it that week in Parliament where Morrison called you in, where you were asked by him and his staff several times to stop posting stuff on Facebook? Was that the last straw?
Look, there's not one thing that's been a last straw. It's been an accumulation of issues. The Ivermectin issue has been one that has been dear to my heart. The evidence has been overwhelming. I believe lives have been lost unnecessarily. And I believe in weeks to come, the World Health Organization will actually recommend this drug, belatedly. That should have been done months ago. We had our top people in this country recommending that back in August of last year. We could have saved many lives. We could have avoided much of the damage that we've done to our economy. And I think that I owe it. I have an obligation to, if I'm going to continue to act on my conscience and speak on these things, that's why I've made this decision today.
Now, there were some comments last night, I believe you made, that have been sent that talked about where it all started for you. And before I posted, I checked the credibility of it and spoke about someone having a long Jewish beard.
Oh, right.
Were you concerned about that?
Actually, no. That was an absolute abuse of parliamentary privilege. I'm not sure who that Labor member's name was, but that was an absolute bloody disgrace, and I am absolutely livid about that.
Can you explain that to me? What's happened?
Okay. Dr. Zev Zelenko is a gentleman that I've had the great pleasure and follow, and I've actually had an hour's conversation with him that was organised to be recorded and put on a Zoom video so people can say what it actually is. I said to Dr. Zelenko, he's a Jewish doctor out of New York, and he has a long Jewish beard. And I've asked my Jewish friends, and they said there's nothing anti-Semitic about saying someone has a long Jewish beard. I've said of Dr. Zelenko, "So you are my hero. I have very few heroes in this world. Dr. Zelenko is one. It's your courage and strength that has inspired me, Dr. Zelenko, to say the things that I have done." This is a Jewish gentleman, and I'm accused of being anti-Semitic by some grub in the Chamber of Parliament.
Did that happen this morning?
That happened last night, but that was aside from this.
Did Prime Minister's office talk to you about that?
No, I only saw that last night, and I was just disgusted that a member of this Parliament, a member of the Labor Party, would use that chamber to make an anti-Semitic slur against myself. Someone that is actually praising and saying a Jewish gentleman is one of my heroes.
Were there any colleagues that you consulted before this decision today?
No, there weren't.
Okay, so how do you think Scott Morrison will feel about it? He had 77 seats, now he's got 76. You take the Speaker away, 75. You won't vote for every single government bill, will you?
Well, look, I will vote consistent to being a Liberal member of Parliament. Right? That means everything is supply and confidence, I will support the government on. Every single policy that we took to the last election, I have a duty to support that, to be faithful to my constituents. I'll support that. So the only difference will be that I'll be a member of the crossbench and I'll be able to speak freely and frankly on issues of my conscience.
So this is because the government didn't allow you to speak freely as far as you were concerned?
Well, I believe that the issue of Ivermectin, the blocking of doctors from using it, I'd like to make a special call out here of that National COVID Evidence Task Force. These people are an absolute disgrace. They are the ones to blame. They're the ones that we've given the job to supposedly look at all the evidence. There are now over 42-something studies on Ivermectin, 42 published studies in the medical literature. You go to this National COVID Evidence website and they say they've looked at only 7. This is simply not good enough. And I want to call these people out, and I can do that far better from the crossbench than I can as a member of the government.
Thanks very much for your time.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
So there you have it, a horror fortnight for the government really, with Craig Kelly resigning from the Liberal Party today and going to the crossbench in this party room resignation without warning the PM or any other MPs. This basically means, with the Speaker being with the government, the numbers in the House of Representatives are now 75-75. Bob Katter often either votes with the government or abstains. So in reality, a lot of the time it will be 75-74 the government's way. Government sources putting forward this morning that the Prime Minister's office were attempting to pressure Mr Kelly to sack a staffer who was the subject of an AVO media reports, Frank Zumbo, and Anthony Albanese was questioning the PM about this in question time. Now, the local News Corp Australia Southern Sydney reporter Eliza Barr tweeted here that she told PMO about these allegations months ago and they did not act. In fact, she said she went to them in early August to 3 media advisors about this AVO and received no response. That's what she said on Twitter this afternoon. You heard Anthony Albanese raise it in question time. Now, here is Scott Morrison answering Kieran in his press conference earlier and speaking generally about Mr Kelly's departure.
Prime Minister, what does it say about your authority over your party room when you lose one of your own members to the crossbench, and this is an individual who owes you? You saved his pre-selection.
In relation to the member for Hughes, to Craig, we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago, as you'll be aware. I set out some very clear standards and he made some commitments that I expected to be followed through on. He no longer felt that he could meet those commitments, but I can tell you, my standards don't change. I long expressed to Mr Kelly my concerns about that staff member, and he has long understood what my expectations were about how he would deal with that matter.
My question is to the Prime Minister, and I refer to his comments today regarding a staff member employed by the member for Hughes who has been the subject of multiple allegations of inappropriate behaviour towards women and girls since 2014. The Prime Minister said today, quote, "I have long expressed to Mr Kelly my concerns about that staff member." Given the Prime Minister's long knowledge, why did the Prime Minister do nothing about it for years?
The matters that I raised with the member for Hughes related, of course, when I met several weeks ago, to the various statements he'd made concerning the government's response to the pandemic and the health measures were put in place. It is also true that within the last few weeks, Mr Speaker, I became aware of some other matters which the Department of Finance— I'm happy to answer the question, Mr Speaker.
The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr Speaker, with the Department of Finance, and we have initiated a process that is looking into those precise matters that came to my attention a few weeks ago, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the interjections of the Leader of the Opposition seem to confuse the fact that I have long held issues regarding a particular staff member and their performance in that office, not related to the issues he is referring to in asking that question. That is a matter that I've raised on numerous occasions, Mr Speaker, but that reached a more serious point in recent weeks. I raised those matters with the member for Hughes. He undertook to take some certain actions on behalf of those discussions. Those actions were not taken, Mr Speaker, and the member for Hughes has taken his decision today.
Now, we remember, apart from the Zumbo issue, Scott Morrison hauled Kelly into his office to tell him off last month for continuing to talk on Ivermectin and other therapies. I've texted Mr Kelly concerning these allegations he may have gone over Mr Zumbo's employment. He has denied to me he resigned because of the situation around Mr Zumbo. He has told me in a text message, quote, "My staff are my staff. I have to decide on them. I have an obligation to all my staff to ensure that they are not denied natural justice, and I don't throw them under the bus for political expediency. It would have been nice if the government did that for our Afghan veterans."